Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the results conference of CD PROJEKT Group. My name is Adam Kiciński, and the presentation will be presented by me together with Piotr Nielubowicz. Last year, we celebrated 10th anniversary of The Witcher 1. I'd like to comment on the sales of the first series, The Witcher 1, 2 and 3, till the end of last year, sold 33 million copies, and we are very proud of this outcome. It's a truly impressive number. Well, of course, the main driver, the biggest sales in this series involves The Witcher 3, which has been in the market for the past 3 years. That's why we decided to compare 3 years of each Witcher to show you the big leap between the games. Now, as you will see, The Witcher 2 sold fourfold better in terms of revenues than The Witcher 1, and The Witcher 3 11-fold better than The Witcher 2. And if you add on top of that the extensions, the increase was 15-fold. Looking at the next years of sales, you will see that The Witcher 3 has been selling well, not only after release, or on the day of the release, as well as later on. Comparing year 1 and 2, sales in year 2 was 65%, and third year to second year, more than 40%, and our games have been selling for a very long time. The Witcher 1 has been selling really well for a decade, so it's worthwhile doing good games, investing in quality, and adding things to games that support sales after the release, such as extensions. Now over to you, Piotr. Piotr will talk about financial results. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. In 2017, the group worked out more than 463 million zloty of sales revenues, and that's a great outcome, especially comparing it to last year reference period, where we released Blood and Wine, and The Witcher 3 was released as addition of the game of the year. And cost of sales this year was proportionally lower than a year before. That's because of the fact that historical expenses for the development of basic games, The Witcher 1, 2 and 3, and extensions were included in costs of previous periods. And in 2017, the revenues that we generated on our basic titles totally translated to gross margin, and gross margin exceeded 380 million zloty. In 2017, we spent a little less in terms of operating costs. Out of 140 million zloty, there were 3 basic groups of costs. General administration, slightly higher than the year before. That's because higher scale of operations that CD PROJEKT Red has been doing. It's realizing Gwent live, and there is an increase of the scale of GOG. And the second area is reserves depending on the results. They are proportional to results. And the third group of costs of selling related to promotions. In 2017, they were dedicated mainly to Gwent. Net result of CD PROJEKT Group in 2017 was more than 200 million zlotys. That's the third year in a row where the profitability was 43%. The same profitability was in 2015 during release of The Witcher, 2016 when we released the extension, and we repeated that in 2017. The biggest impact involved CD PROJEKT Red, more than 330 million of revenues from sales, and it translated into our margin, which was more than 316 million zloty. Lower operating cost, 94 million zloty, and the net result was, for the whole 2017 of CD PROJEKT Red segment, 184 million zloty. So we had phenomenal net profitability, revenues, less costs, less taxes was able to generate 56% of the amount as net profit after tax at the disposal of RED. Now, sales. The Witcher 3 is very important, but sales of The Witcher 3 has been changing after the release. And this diagram shows two important informations. Number one, in 2017, sales in pieces of The Witcher 3 was higher than the year before, in 2016. We are extremely proud of that, and it had impact on total sale of all games, which was 33 million of copies, as mentioned by Adam. The second important information is that on the year of the release, 70% of sales was sales of console copies and slightly more than 30% PC copies. The trend has been changing over time. PCs have the longest life cycle. Now in 2017, 50% of sales stemmed from PC copies, and the other half was attributed to both consoles. Methods of delivering games to customers have changed over time. During the release, a vast majority of sales, more than 70%, was realized with the box version, but in 2017 the proportion has reversed. 3/4 of copies sold were copies sold within digital distribution, and this allows us to participate in a higher part of retail price, so we earn more on each digital copy than on box copy. And now the second segment, GOG generated a record revenue on sales, 170 million zloty almost, and this revenue was 27% higher than last year, which translated to even a bigger, more than 37% bigger gross profit on sales. To a large extent, that's due to Gwent, which contributed to GOG results in 2017. Along with the increase in scale of GOG, operating costs increased, exceeding 43 million zloty, but the increase was slightly lower than what GOG generated in terms of revenues or margin. So GOG worked out 16 million zloty, only threefold more than the year before, which allows us to generate twofold profitability vis-à-vis 2016.
When talking about assets, fixed assets, the biggest change relates to the outlays on development efforts that surpassed 80 million zlotys, reaching 442 million zlotys, containing of costs spent on the development of new games, including Cyberpunk and Gwent, as well as new technologies developed for GOG. When talking about working capital, the biggest change related to trade receivables, and the main reason behind a drop here was the release of Game of the Year edition of Witcher 3, which boosted the total as of the end of the year, but the revenue stream came in 2017, reducing that level. Another factor contributing towards the liability shift was the fact of digital distribution that is characterized by shorter liability recovery cycle, meaning we have less cash frozen in liabilities. The revenue stream is coming into our group much faster. As to the other change to working capital, increase in deposits and cash available by 50 million zlotys, which I'm going to discuss more extensively in the part related to liabilities. As to liabilities, plus 200 million zlotys, and a splitting of dividends with our shareholders, paying out 101 million zlotys, which affected the working capital negatively. When talking about cash flows, 2017 started with a cash and deposit balance of close to 600 million zlotys. Over the course of last year, we have spent close to 77 million zlotys on the efforts related to development of new games and technologies. At the same time, we paid out 101 million zlotys in dividends. As to the other operations carried out, we generated positive cash flow at a level of close to 228 million zlotys. All in all, 2018 is close to a balance that is 50 million zlotys cash and bank deposits balance 50 million zlotys higher than the initial balance, and the total value of those cash and bank deposits was 647 million zlotys. And as to our cash efficiency in the longer run, the significance of the past 3 years is clearly visible here. Since our launch on the stock exchange, we've been earning money each and every year. When launching Witcher 1, Witcher 2, 2011 and so forth, we managed to repay all the loans, then we accumulated cash and reinvested it in developing further titles. The largest blue field in 2014 matches the expenditures on the development of Witcher 3 that we released in 2015. That investment was converted in positive cash flows with a multiplication factor indeed. For the next 2 years, the sales of Witcher continued and its extension packs. The money we earn, we reinvest in further projects, growing the blue field a little bit, and partially next year we also shared our profits with our shareholders, but we are not reducing our pace. We're moving ahead dynamically with huge ambition and appetite levels. This is it from me. Thank you so much. And now, Adam, the floor is yours. Gwent is a project that is facing concentrated promotion right now. We're talking about it. The game launched last year in an open beta version for 3 platforms. Then we launched it in a PC closed beta in China. Near the end of last year, the players had almost 500 cards available. The game has 10 fully localized language versions, and whole past year, or most of our Gwent energy last year, was focused on balancing the gameplay. It's quite a complex game, actually, that may not be that visible at a first glance, but we wanted to attain a balance that would let us develop the game for the years to come. And we really like the results. The game will continue to be balanced, but this stage of intensive iterative balancing efforts is already a thing of the past. This year we're going to focus on further development of the game. We're going to add new cards. We're launching a new faction. We will also animate more and more in-game events. A huge story-driven campaign, Blood and Wine, will launch, and at the end of the year we are planning to get out of beta. Also this year, but this is already a thing of the past, we launched a new play mode, an arena mode. And let's see what this is all about. For those of you who prefer competition, who want to train and get better and better in Gwent, we have developed a whole series of esports tournaments, launching the first season last year, that is to finish with a great global tournament at the beginning of 2019. We're treating esports more than seriously, organizing the games with immense attention to detail. The former challenger was organized in a huge, tremendous Moszna castle in the south of Poland, and the next is to be held almost 100 meters below the ground level at the Wieliczka salt mine. Esports is rivalry, is competition, but it also implements specific business goals for us. It maintains player engagement as the players train a lot. It boosts player retention, but also attracts new players as esports are broadcasted, and players are often encouraged to try playing their own because of watching these broadcasts on screen. And that's what our next challenger is going to look like. At the end of April, the broadcasts will be there, so you can watch them. And now turning to our other business division, GOG.com, last year we've been working to develop that division with a concentrated effort, and we have developed the service throughout all its sections. We've been adding games to the online store, we've been adding language versions, we have almost 100 new partners as to GOG Galaxy. Oh yes, let me just state that we did one more important thing. We have developed a live ops team. That is a team, a little bit of a crossover between GOG and Red. That's a team supporting Gwent in game dev areas, development of the game as a service. That's a new area for us. These are new competencies that we're just acquiring and that we're going to need in the future. While at GOG Galaxy, we have added almost 500 titles, meaning that GOG Galaxy has been implemented for almost 500 titles, out of which almost 80 have had GOG Galaxy implemented by their developers, because we're putting up our technology for the developers so that they are able to implement GOG Galaxy in their games, so that their games utilize a series of functionalities that we offer. GOG Galaxy is a technological backend for our Gwent too. This is also a very important piece of information. As to GOG technology, our objective and strategy is to develop competencies with regard to online games and to seek as many synergies as possible between GOG and CD Projekt Red. We have started implementing that strategy several years ago already, and the first business results are already visible. If we take a look at GOG sales split into external third-party games and our own titles, obviously we have orders of magnitude more of the third-party games. The revenues from our own productions are growing. In 2015 that was Witcher 3, but 2016 is a very interesting year because these were Witcher 3 extension packs actually that sold really well via GOG, and 2017 that's Gwent, obviously. To conclude my presentation, two pieces of news. The first, just 2 days old, we're opening a dev studio in Wrocław with a very strong team of almost 20 individuals, people we have gotten to know already, and we are more than certain that they fit into our strategy, that they are quality-driven, with their extensive experience and track record. That's just the beginning. We want that team to grow even stronger, and we have hopes for the future, for the Wrocław location. The next thing that happened over the past few days that we're very proud of, the list of 300 best games of all times, the Game Informer list was just released. That's the largest gaming magazine, issued at over 6 million copies, and Witcher 3 opens the list of best games of all times by Game Informer. Thank you so much, and should you have any questions, feel free to ask them.
Let me start. Pulse business. So I wanted to ask about the last takeover. There's an option of paying with own shares. If shareholders agree, this is what is written. Couldn't we use a resolution on payback from 2016? No, you couldn't, because payback has a different purpose. So we have to specify the purpose again. But the amount is so small that we think that this is a technical matter. The other studio worked on some developments. It had several developments. And will you use them or not? We are not planning to do that, to use those developments, but we want to do things related to cyberpunk. Question without the mic. Have you cooperated with them before? Yes, we've known each other for quite a long time. So these are the people whom we wanted to work with because we know each other. Maciej from Bloomberg News. When can we expect the second beep from Cyberpunk? Well, as regards cyberpunk, I would terribly want to tell you something about this, but today this is not the time. Not today. When will you say something more? I can't announce the announcements, sorry. The question was, what about E3? What will be shown there? We haven't announced that yet. We will announce it just before. Two questions, but please use the mic. When is the release of Thronebreaker? And yes, another question. Can we expect a dividend for the past year, considering the record stack of money, 650 million zloty? Well, as regards Thronebreaker, we are not delivering any details now. We are announcing that this is going to be this year, but we are not narrowing it down to any precise date. As regards dividend, we haven't thought about dividend yet in concrete terms, but when there's a recommendation of the management board, we will be happy to publish it by means of respective channels. No mic, sorry. Could you share statistics of arena games on Gwent? We are not quoting Gwent statistic, but we are analyzing it very thoroughly. We are not publishing internal Gwent statistics. And in technical request, please ask questions to the mic, because people who see us on the screens of their computers will be able to hear the questions as well. Hello, I have a question about artworks that we can see in the back and on the t-shirts. Is it something new? I haven't seen it before. It's artwork from Gwent. Okay, thanks. Hello. I wanted to ask, most of all, for you to tell us more about the development of Gwent in China. We are still in closed beta. When can we expect next stages? Has Gwent generated revenues that would cover the milestones, the payments that you received last year? That's one thing. Gwent in China, officially, it's still in closed beta, but we are including gamers quite broadly. Gwent in China has its own pace, its own time agenda. I can't let you into the details. We are working on Gwent with our Chinese partner. The game itself is in the same version in which it is available all over the world. And finances, Piotr? Yes, I take it you're asking whether royalties have exceeded the value of our provisions for royalties. Well, no, of course not. The provisions relate to commercial phase of Gwent. Now we are just testing, and this is a preliminary stage of closed beta. So the minimum information we receive takes into account full scale of monetization of Gwent in China, and we haven't been realizing that yet. In Q4, we also had a big increase of expenses on the development of games. Looking at the last quarters, at the last 4 quarters, 2017, it's more than in previous years. Why is that? Is it more expenses on Cyberpunk, Gwent, or maybe proportionally? We have been spending more and more on each project, but the leap was mainly due to costs related to locations that we were realizing in that time. And this is related to the new announcement of War and Blood, and new language versions are recorded in different countries in studio, and these are one-off cumulated costs that were started in Q4. War of Blood is a big extension. There's a big campaign with a lot of text, so the location costs money. I wanted to ask a question. Last year, you had record expenses on development work. What about this year? What is your expectation? Because Cyberpunk development will be more intense, also beta. So will it mean more expenses? Well, you should expect higher expenses because we keep recruiting people. So both teams, Cyberpunk and Gwent team, have been growing. And on top of development expenses, we will have the Wrocław part of CD PROJEKT, a new one that we've just mentioned. So quite naturally, the teams have been getting bigger, and a vast part of these expenses involve payroll.
Two more questions pertaining to this closed beta version and its shift to an alpha, an open version. Is it going to go in parallel with a mobile version in terms of well, Android users or the other leading system users in terms of monetization? That's one question. The second, also in this context, is releasing Geralt as the proponent in Soul Calibur to be released this year, an attempt to get a stronger foothold in the Asian markets to boost the Gwent success? Well, the first question was actually a statement that I cannot confirm because we have not announced a mobile version release. So I cannot say what is going to happen to unannounced items at the moment of the launch. So I'm not going to answer this. As to Soul Calibur, well, it's a promotional element, indeed, not necessarily to Asian markets, but more globally. This has no financial incentive to us, but rather it's a promotional effort. Okay, so one more question as to your Gwent channel, Gwent YouTube channel. Over the past 3 or 4 days, a 15-minute video was released showing at least the outline of gameplay in terms of selected parts of that video, and it looks like quite a solid strategy. The map also reveals multiple locations. How much in terms of a gameplay time is there? Can you comment on that? I suppose you may not be able to comment on that, but if you are, as this pertains to already available material, well, we have announced that Thronebreaker is going to be a major thing, 20+ hours of gameplay, and actually it's going to be even more than that probably. It's a really big campaign with its identity. It's a game within a game. So yes, it's going to be quite a chunk of gameplay. Recently, in one of the conferences, you mentioned Cyberpunk is going to be an intergenerational project for consoles, that it will be released for next PS and Xbox generation. Is it going to happen all at once at the launch moment? Well, the next gen has not been announced yet, so we can only speculate. Technologically wise, Cyberpunk is very advanced. Our technology is ready to interface with future generations. The game is developed in such a way that it can use future very powerful equipment. But I cannot tell you more beyond that today, as no future generation of consoles has been announced so far. I wanted to ask whether Cyberpunk is going to include a multiplayer mode and whether various nationalities and classes of characters are going to be available. Well, it will be possible to put together your character, and they will range throughout various classes. As to multiplayer, first of all, we're going to deliver the players a huge story-driven role-playing game for a single player, as it was the case of Witcher 3. As to further extension of the game, I don't like to comment on that, but I'm not saying it's not going to be the case, because we already said in the past we wanted our future projects to integrate online components at some point in the future.
Ja mam pytanie jeszcze odnośnie właśnie Cyberpunka.
Another question is to Cyberpunk
Multiplayerowy czy
and the potential multiplayer mode.
ostatnio bardzo trybem Battle Royale.
Are you considering the Battle Royale mode?
My się nad
This one to be used in Cyberpunk. Well, actually we're considering everything and anything, but as of today, we are not discussing Cyberpunk yet. The first thing we're going to discuss is the immense story-driven roleplay for a single player without any micropayments whatsoever, without any hidden things whatsoever, just as it was the case for Witcher 3, even though it's going to be a very different game than Witcher 3, with no predefined character, with a futuristic world, with the 3D movement, but as to the product character, it's going to be just the same as Witcher 3, namely a single-player game purchased for a one-off fee, and for that one-off fee you will be getting many, many hours of amazing gameplay. Another question. What are your predictions in terms of sales of Witcher 3 this year? Are you observing anything after the first quarter now? And what is going to be your sales driver this year? And what are your cash flow expectations as to the end of this year? Are the development efforts so concentrated that your cash levels will go down, or do you believe sales will compensate for that? Well, we're not commenting on future results. The main two sales drivers this year are going to be Witcher and Gwent, but as to the results, we'd love to discuss them in future conferences. What you saw for Witcher 1 and 2, what were the fourth-year sales levels as compared to Witcher 3? Well, Witcher 1 sold on really decent levels for the first 9 years after its release, but it was a very special game in that it was only available for PCs, with the PC releases routinely boasting the longest life cycle, but we're selling that game, we're still selling it, and we are getting a considerable chunk from sales as compared to the first year of sales. The question went without a mic. Oh, the question was whether we could translate that forecast into Witcher 3. Yes, definitely we expect Witcher 3 to continue selling for the years to come, just like Witcher 1, and in a sense we're only at the beginning of this journey. What was also visible today in one of the slides was that total sales revenue for Witcher 1 in year 2 and 3 was exceeded the sales revenue for the first year after its launch. So in the second and third year, it earned more for us than in the first year. But there's a difference between Witcher 1, Witcher 2, and Witcher 3, because Witcher 1 was released for PCs only. And very soon, sales were dominated by digital distribution. Digital distribution has an infinite stock level, number of SKUs. Nobody takes those SKUs off the shelves, while Witcher 2 was released both for PCs and Xbox 360. For Xbox 360 there was no digital distribution enabling efficient distribution of games like Witcher 2 out there, so at a certain point the console version is driven out of the stores, driven out by new titles, but the PC version continues selling really well online. Witcher 3 was released for 3 platforms, and each of these platforms has a very strong digital distribution in place. It's just the first generation of consoles boasting an actual full-scale digital distribution, so we are in a new reality, one very favorable to our operations, because customers will continue being able to purchase Witcher free digitally for as long as they continue owning these devices. I also wanted to ask about the 4K version. Did it influence your Q4 sales to any tangible extent, and can we count on this being a considerable add-on or a considerable share for this version? And another question. Is Cyberpunk going to be released for Nintendo Switch? Well, it's tough to say if the 4K version had its bearing, because starting from a certain point, Witcher 3 was released in 4K. There is nothing to compare against, and anyone who purchased Witcher 3 for consoles is now able to update it to 4K. From our point of view, the decision to release Witcher 3 in 4K was a long-term one. We want the best game of all times, according to Game Informer, to be available at top quality, technically possible, and thanks to this, it is indeed, because whoever purchases the new state-of-the-art 4K console is also able to launch a 4K Witcher 3. But as to the Cyberpunk platform, unfortunately, I cannot tell you anything about that today. In the meantime, let me add that I believe that developing and launching the 4K version is important from the point of view of long-term life cycle of this console. Over time, more and more customers are going to have these consoles, and if we don't have a product meeting their expectations, it will probably contain our sales for the future. So releasing these high-resolution versions will enable us to continue sales over the years to come. Another issue related to Nintendo Switch. The commercial success of the platform is visible. So when looking at your catalog, maybe one with your pipeline projects we have not gotten informed about, do you believe this is something that is interesting to you for your current or future projects, or is it too early to say? When talking about our larger games, we are focusing on the strongest devices out there, the high-spec PCs and consoles. As to other games, they are PC-based, I mean Gwent, and to consoles. We don't plan Nintendo Switch releases as for now, but we shall see what the future brings. If there are no more questions, thank you so much for your attention. And now let's have refreshments in the foyer. Thank you so much.